Welcome to the Liberated Equestrian Podcast and community. This is a place for horsewomen to experience belonging, breakthrough, and becoming. I'm your host, Lisa Pulliam, founder of StableMinded.us, mental health professional, second season equestrian, and author of Finding Calm, helping riders navigate through fear and anxiety. The Liberated Equestrian is devoted to the mission of being set free and experiencing breakthroughs in every aspect of our horsemanship and humanship. This is all about mind, body, heart, and soul care for ourselves, our horses, and the people we do life with, so that we can grow together as a community of emotionally and relationally healthy horsewomen. So find a comfortable spot, take a deep breath, and let's embark on this journey of becoming liberated equestrians together. Hey everyone. Lisa here again for this edition of the Liberated Equestrian Podcast. And I'm coming to you with a bit of an update as we round into the last episode of season 1. So I love this opportunity to kind of recap. I'm recording at the end of August. You might see a little bit of a bruise on my nose. It's because the most recent events of this month included a little bit of a horseback riding fall accident. I don't really know what you want to call it. A little trip to the emergency room, a bruised tailbone. Yeah, all the fun things in liberated equestrian world. And I wanted to record this episode now while I'm still experiencing the wake of that to sort of document my recovery process back from this particular fall, which is the first in about 4 years. So the last fall landed me at the beginning of my comeback and the beginning of writing Finding Calm, helping riders navigate through fear and anxiety. It is very interesting now to experience this 4 years later when I know all that I know. So at that time, I don't think I was even I don't even know if I had started grad school. I think I had been in my first year of grad school. And so I had some training under my belt through natural lifemanship about having this trauma-informed perspective. But as I was telling a friend the other day, like I knew as soon as I hit the ground and popped back up and walked after my runaway horse that had just startled, all the thoughts started going through my mind. And by the time we got him and I was sitting down and kind of I had just taken my exploded air vest off and took my helmet off, noticed I was bruised from that helmet flipping forward onto my forehead, trying to assess like how badly I was injured. I could feel exactly what it was happening in real time in terms of my sympathetic nervous system. I was in a total survival state. The alarm bell went off in the brainstem and there was no cognitive functioning. I literally, like, I'm holding my phone in my hand and I cannot find the favorite button to call my husband. And as that's happening, I'm like on one half of my brain thinking, like, wow, you are in a little trauma state. You can't even think clearly. Your brain has flipped the lid. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to go back to the episode. I think it's the probably the second episode on trauma and the brain. And I'm like, I know what's happening. I could feel my body sweating. I could feel the nausea set in. I knew where I was in the process of sympathetic nervous system response, and yet I could do nothing about it. I had to rely on my community at that point to help me. And they jumped in, right? They were emotionally and physically there supporting me. They were putting, cold towels on the back of my neck because they understood what was happening from a polyvagal response, or it's something that they had witnessed before, even if they didn't know why it worked. They were there. They knew to take the phone and call my husband. They knew what I needed. And as I reflect on it, it goes right back to all the principles that I wrote about in Finding Calm and the importance of connection as that first C in the CALM framework. So connection, awareness, learning, and motivation. That's what CALM stands for in my book. And I needed connection with the people who could do for me what I couldn't do for myself in that moment. And in the week since that accident, uh, really relying on community, the community of my family, the community of emotional and physical support around me, the community that needed to be there when I climbed back on Kodiak's back, not not planning on riding, but because I knew I needed that process in my healing. And, my dear friend Janelle, who held him, my husband, who was there helping me dismount, knowing that there was support going on around me. It's been just quite the experience. And it's been hard. It's been hard when my eyes close after the medication wore off and after the initial trauma of the fall wore off. And I'm specifically not telling you about what happened because what I've learned as a coach and therapist for equestrians, there is that kind of secondary trauma that happens when you picture somebody and you guys relatively know me, right? You've been watching my videos, you've been listening, you feel like you know me. And picturing an accident happen can actually instill some fear in you. And so I don't want to do that at this point in this format. But kind of going back to the as I was beginning the healing process and I wasn't as sleepy, noticing that my mind would start racing, not only about what happened, what I could have done differently, how I could have responded differently in that situation, but also all the what ifs. And as those pieces of the puzzle unraveled, I also was really starting to struggle with, is this a risk I want to continue to take? Callie King and I have talked about this on one of our episodes of there's inherent risk when you ride horses and the struggle of the risk I'm taking and the responsibilities I have as a therapist, as a business owner, as a coach, but primarily as a mom and now as a grandmother and as a wife. What risks am I willing to take at this point in my life that this was very sobering about, right? So on the way to the hospital, even when I'm in the hospital with my husband and I don't really know what's wrong, if anything is fractured, which nothing was fractured, praise God for that, I don't want to tell my girls tonight. I don't want them to lose sleep over this. I'll message them in the morning. And yet I wanted my family to know because I wanted the comfort of their connection. And yet I wanted to protect them from the worry and finding myself asking these questions of is this fair? Is it fair that I take this risk? Should I go back to riding? Right? Those are the things that are going through my mind in those first 48 hours, the first 5 hours. Should I be doing this? Am I done? Will I ride again? And I share this because so many of you as horsewomen have wrestled through that on your own and continue maybe to wrestle through that and question what is the reality here and where is the fantasy and how do I find some balance between both what I want and what I should or shouldn't do. I was so grateful that I had a appointment lined up with my therapist. I was able to process this with her, and she's done a lot of great work with me over the last year and a half around just identifying parts of self. And she said to me, Lisa, you are your most authentic self as this equestrian, as this horsewoman. And I've been sitting with that, and it's true. I feel most at home in an environment where there are horses and a family of horse loving people that I get to connect with. I feel most alive. I forget my pain. I forget my problems, physical, emotional, financial, relational, whatever they are. I can forget it when I'm in the saddle. And even when I'm just standing with a horse and breathing with them, I love it and I don't want to give it up. And I know based on my age based on my body. At some point, riding won't be on the table. But even there's inherent risks with handling horses. And you know that. I had a friend posted that she had just gotten barreled over by one, right? She wasn't even in the saddle, but something happened and the horse responded that way. There are risks. And my therapist, who also happens to be not a present day equestrian, but grew up riding, she's like, there are risks when you drive a car. And I'm like, I know, but we normalize those risks. Everybody does it. So except if you're really struggling in a traumatic response to an accident, you do it and your family members expect you to do it. And she was able to help me identify that there was a part of self, a part of me that is holding the responsibility, the high performing, responsible, firstborn, type A woman who wants to be a good steward of this life that I've been given by God and use my time and resources and talents for his kingdom work, against the I feel my greatest delight and my most authentic self when I'm horseback riding. And the endorphins that are released, the physical exercise of it, the time away from screens and computers and the world, just is where I feel like I'm the most grounded and the best version of myself. And then I bring that back with me to these relationships and these connections. And so it's been very interesting in this healing process. So protocol with a bruised tailbone, many of you probably already know this, is time and pace the pain. So if it hurts, don't do it. If you do something and you hurt again, scale back. So I have been really good about listening to my body. For these first like 6 days, I have, not been lifting. I've been resting. I've been sleeping. I've been picking up some work here and there, computer-based work. And that is a change, right? That I'm able to listen to my body. So much so that I chose not to take my ADHD medication because I did not want to mask the pain that I was feeling and just push through. I want to not push through. I want to heal. I want to heal well. And that is a very different response than I've had to every other injury I've ever sustained in my life. I've been injured on and off since I was a teenager. And so I'm looking at that. I'm looking at what gets accomplished in the stillness and the quiet, what emotions come up, what pity party. I've been mad, I've been sad, I've been frustrated, I've been jealous, I've been all sorts of things. But I've not really been anxious, which is a change. I'm not worried, and I'm not scrambling to figure it all out. And this is what is so amazing because it's a testament to the emotional healing work I've been doing for myself over the last 18 months of really, maybe it's not even 18 months. I'd say concerted 12 months of dealing with the core attachment wounds that have come out of my childhood, the impact of the emotional neglect that I experienced, the toxic behaviors that I have adopted in order to survive, and learning to be present with the parts of me that show up and not trying to micromanage or fix that. It's been amazing. And seeing how I'm responding to this is part of that amazing, as much as it is hard. Like, trust me, this is not a toxic positivity podcast of saying, like, woohoo, I'm so glad I fell off my horse. No, it's the most beautiful August weather I have ever seen in the Northeast. And I have ridden through, you know, temperatures in the frozen ground in the teens and 95-degree dripping sweat experiences over the last year. And now it's the most beautiful weather and I can't ride. I've just started trail riding and now I can't go out on the trails. Trust me, there's a part of me that is not happy. But there is a part of me that is also realizing there's growth that's gotten me to this place, and there is still more growth to come. As I say all the time, that I believe God who began a good work in us will bring it to completion on the day of Christ Jesus. And until I see him in eternity, I'm a work in progress. And I believe that for every person I am in relationship with and every person I work with. So I believe that even in this bad situation, good can come from it because there's something I can learn. And in the past, I would always think, well, I'm learning it for you. But this time I feel like I'm learning it for me. And then I'm able to share it with you. It's a slightly different perspective. So, I'm launching into like, this is what just happened to me. Uh, but I also had previously been thinking about this episode that I was going to record as the end of the season episode, because even before the accident, there were so many things that were shifting in my life that I wanted to just kind of bring to you. I've been really praying about what is the direction of the podcast, what is the direction of Stable Minded, and I want to share some of those thoughts with you. So, kind of rewind back to the winter, spring of 2025. I launched this podcast in February, right? And I didn't know what direction it was going to go in. I knew I wanted it to be about belonging and breakthrough and becoming. And I was picturing 3 seasons of this. But then I had so many episodes lined up that I was like, ooh, should it be one long season with all these episodes? What should it be? And I've decided that this is the culmination of season one, because it feels like the culmination of a series of lessons, and I don't know what's going to come next. But my guess is that season two, if it comes out, if that's the Lord's will come out in February of 2026. And there's going to be a little bit of a break here. And part of that reason is that it's like three-pronged. One, the way I was building Stable Minded and distributing content has kind of shifted because the industry has shifted and the cost of operations have shifted. So, Teachable was a platform I was using to distribute course related content. Their prices have gone through the roof. You probably shared the sentiment that I do, which is like information overload, oversaturated world. But the reason I started using Teachable again was because I was sharing these therapist tips and Wellness Wednesday tips on Instagram, and they could be as long as I wanted them to be. But Instagram changed their metrics, and now I was limited to 3 minutes, and I'm not quick. So 3 minutes is really hard for me and would require a lot of editing, which took the joy out of just being authentic with you. So I went from Instagram to Teachable to try to create content that you could use on a regular basis to support your personal growth journey. Well, for me as an ADHD individual, when I have an idea, like an organizational idea of this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it, and this is how I'm going to map it out, and I create a pathway for myself, it's very easy for me to show up in the production path. But when those things externally get changed, I get stuck if I don't see the way forward. And that's been a real challenge for me of like, what is most cost effective, time effective, and useful for you that still aligns with my values and my time in terms of the production end of things. So I've been stuck, honestly. And stuck led into, well, I'm going to put that on the back burner when I closed the Thrive course content because I was studying for my NCE, which is my national licensing exam. And I really dove into studying like April, May, June, consumed a lot of hours. We're talking hours, my friend. And I passed that exam on July 29th, which is amazing because now the only thing left for my full licensure as a therapist is hours. And I've been working on those by working with clients and by creating content and teaching. So I was like, okay, I'm staying in the counseling lane. Yeah, secret. I was wondering about that. But passing that exam was a real win for me because historically, I never passed standardized exams. My scores are barely passing. And I was convinced when I picked that date that I wasn't actually going to pass that exam. But I picked it because my daughter was due with our firstborn grandbaby in August. And I thought, I want to get all this studying and this out of the way. And if I don't pass, then I will circle back around and work on this in the winter. Well, I passed. And so hallelujah. That just feels so good and so affirming that the ADHD medication has worked. My studying abilities have worked. I am on track for something I've been working on for a really long time. And then, just as I was going to start digging out and figure out what I was going to do with content, my grandson was born 10 days early. And becoming a GG has been one of the greatest delights of my life. And it's not so much about the newborn baby snuggles, which are absolutely as amazing as I remember them as a new mom, but it is the relationship with my daughter and being able to show up in that role for her and my son-in-law, and recognizing that there were lots of really good things I did as a mom that were really overshadowed in the last 10 years by what I believed I didn't do that was good enough. Uh, there are a lot of good things I have learned and discovered and ways of showing up in the world that I can offer to my family, my young adult family, that I didn't recognize before my grandson showed up on this earth. And I want to be there for that. I want to be there for them as much as I was passionate of being there for my kids when they were little, as hard as it was and as sacrificial as it was. This is like an amazing season for me of seeing God's grace and healing and his work. And I want to embrace it and walk in it without limitations. And I don't know what that looks like because it's new. I've never been a GG before, but I want margin in my life to be there. The other thing, tying it back into horses, is that my ability to stay grounded and offer co-regulation to my daughter, my son-in-law, this little baby, is totally a byproduct of all the work I've been doing on my personal healing and all of the work I do with horses and helping my clients through equine assisted therapy, coaching, learning, whatever the dynamic may be, find that somatic awareness and be able to do something with those emotions, those thoughts, those sensations that come up. I realize, wow, this has all been such a gift that I want to keep on giving and teaching about, like, call it a new soapbox, right? The importance of this work. And so here I am, post accident, post transformation into grandmotherhood, post confidence in my role as a therapist, and also feeling somewhat divided. And I understand that as somebody who comes to Stable Minded and looks at the website and looks at all the things, that it can be a bit overwhelming, like, whoa, she's doing so much. Where do I plug in here? As my therapist has affirmed me, is that trying to specialize in one thing will never be me, but having a multi-dimensional way of showing up is my best self. And so I am going to continue to walk down that path by offering counseling, equine assisted EMDR, really specializing in the area of anxiety, ADHD, and more past trauma as opposed to present trauma, really working through those attachment wounds and those, cognitive distortions that need adjustment to show up better. Really pouring into the coaching space again, that I realized is like one of my sweet spots. It's why I got into counseling, was how much I thrived as a coach. And in particular, really working with Christian women who want to experience sort of this biblical transformation piece and walking in alignment with their God-given purpose, even through transitions. And so that it is somewhat of a return to my first love, so to speak, of the work I was doing. And then really opening up the door to make space for consulting work. I've been in business for 30 years for myself. I have launched, grown, stabilized multiple iterations of my business and ministry. I've come alongside other ministry leaders for a long season. I was training coaches and helping coaches launch their businesses. And in this stage of my career, I'm kind of is novelty the right word? I'm a recent graduate in private practice, passed her NCE the first time and is halfway through her required hours while having work-life balance and functioning in a specialty like equine assisted therapy. And there are other recent graduates from their earning their master's in clinical counseling or social work or family and marriage therapy that don't have the answers for how to do that. There's even seasoned therapists that want to be able to do this and they don't know how to do it. And I really want to be able to offer guidance both at the student level and the, postgraduate level for those who are interested in that. And so that's kind of the consulting division of Stable Minded. And then I'm a horse girl. I will always be a horse girl, and I will always want to help horse girls, and I guess horse guys too, really integrate humanship and horsemanship and experience that um, dynamic in a new way. That by working on themselves, they're working on their horsemanship. And they are providing something better for their horses alongside serving any equestrian that is struggling with any fear or anxiety or setback because of an experience that they've had. So yeah, it's complicated. Stable minded is four prong, right? It's counseling, coaching, consulting, and equestrian. And then through a biblical worldview for those who want that to be part of their growth process. All that to say, where's Liberated Equestrian fall into place? I don't know. Maybe it should become the Stable Minded podcast where I touch on all these things. Maybe it needs to stay in its lane just from a liberated equestrian perspective. And what I know is when I don't know, the best thing to do is wait and watch. Especially my faith guides this. I'm going to wait and watch and see what the Lord does. What doors does He open? What doors is He closing? I believe in that. God is faithful, and so the expression that's been on me is that I'm going to continue to walk in faith by grace and steward what is in front of me with that very clear picture of my relationship with God is first, my relationship and what I have available within me to pour into my family is second. And then the third part is what I do professionally in serving clients who want and need the services I offer. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Considering I'm coming off of an accident, I'm pretty positive. And the last couple of days has given me some time to play with ideas and sort through things and work on some things that I have been thinking and praying about for many months now. And I'll end with this. I There's a book that I read years ago by a woman named Anne Ortland, and it's called Disciplines of a Beautiful Woman. And that book came into my life because I was a young mom. My oldest, who just had a baby, was entering her like teenage-ish hoods, like her preteen. She was like around 10, I think. And I went to a fellow mom, faculty member's wife at the boarding school, and I said, "What have you done to prioritize your family and raise your daughter the way your daughter has turned out?" I really had such respect for their relationship and this young woman. And she gave me a copy of this book, and I read it from cover to cover. And mind you, the book was written in the 70s, and some of it was like outdated then. But it was like God just dropped this biblical mentor into my life. And I have found myself going back to this book multiple seasons. So now I'm in my fourth read of this. Typically, it's like an every 7 year. I kind of pull this book out and I underline and I highlight and I, savor it. I laugh at it. I mean, like some of her paper notebooks and how many, suit outfits she has in her closet. And some of her things are a little quirky. Some of her things are totally politically incorrect. But her transparency and authenticity of how she's trying to lead her life is an example that I never had in my real life that has shaped me. And I think it's interesting that I'm kind of back to that place of self-reflection and self-evaluation while I have this time to think about it. And in fact, I have sitting on my desk here one of her quotes that really it's been sitting here for years. Now I'm going to read it to you. It says, but remember for all your adult life, you'll be a woman. And how you live your life as a woman all by yourself before God is what makes the real you. Nothing on the exterior can touch or change that precious inner sanctuary, your heart, his dwelling place, unless you let it. And let God, who loves you very much, has tailor made all of your outer life, your circumstances, your relationships, to pressure you into becoming that beautiful woman he's planned for you to be. And I read this now and I'm like, oh, the way God has taught me these lessons, right? Like the language of pressure. That's the language of equine assisted therapy and working with horses. And what is the level of pressure and what is the window of tolerance? What is it about circumstances and relationships? In finding calm, I say you need to take note of what's happening in your environment, what's happening between you and the other, what's happening within yourself, and then what's happening in you together. Like those are your circumstances. That's the exterior. It's also the relationships. As a therapist, I so strongly believe in the attachment theory and what makes us feel secure, insecure. And here's these words saying like, God loves you and you are his, really, right? And that my heart is his dwelling place, and that this is an intimate relationship that can shape me if I allow it. And then even the language of the real you, authentic is what I've always wanted to be, and I've lost pieces of that over my lifetime in trying to find safety, trying to make others happy, trying to keep the peace, trying to be the repairer, trying to be the good girl, and learning to say, no, I only have responsibility over me. And then at the end of the day, I'm a woman on a journey, living a life in search of security, love, and stability that I believe comes from my maker and comes through the choices I make about what I do with my time, who I surround myself with, how I show up in this world. And taking kind of all back, like that was the vision of the Liberated Equestrian Podcast, to find belonging, to find breakthrough, and to find becoming. And I feel like that's what the last 9, 10 months of my life has been about. And so I'm going to sit with that and I'm going to offer that as a challenge to you. What does it look like for you to become liberated, to become free, to step into that life that you're meant to lead, where things happen on the outside, but you have a holy sacredness about what's happening on the inside, that you're doing the business of the healing work on the inside to make that as open and full of love and full of joy and purpose as possible between Eden and eternity. That's the vision I have for myself, and that's the vision I have for you. And if that means I get to record more podcast episodes for you under the banner of Liberated Equestrian, I'm going to do that. If it means I'm heading in a different direction, I feel the freedom to do that too. And that's what I would want for you. So let me know what you're thinking. Drop me a message, leave a comment. Yeah, just give me your perspective. Where do you think the liberated equestrian should go in the future? What are you looking for? What do you want out of this space? And what do you want out of your journey? Thank you for listening in. It's an honor to serve you. It's been an honor to serve you through this podcast season. And as always, I am here in ever-changing formats, helping you to stabilize and thrive, both personally and professionally, in your humanship and in your horsemanship. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberated Equestrian Podcast. I'm so grateful to have you as a part of this community. If you loved today's episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow equestrians. For more information and ongoing support, visit theliberatedEquestrian.us, where you'll find show notes and resources to help you become a liberated equestrian. The Liberated Equestrian Podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The content shared in each episode, including discussions, interviews, and advice, reflects the personal opinions and professional insights of the host and guest. The information provided on this podcast is not a substitute for professional mental health care, counseling, or therapy. Listeners should consult a licensed healthcare professional for specific advice regarding their personal situations. Reliance on any information provided by this podcast is solely at the listener's discretion and risk. While every effort is made to provide accurate and up-to-date information, neither Lisa Pulliam nor the Liberated Equestrian Podcast assumes any responsibilities for errors, omissions, or outcomes resulting from the use of this information. By listening to this podcast, you agree that neither the host, guest, or affiliated party shall be held liable for any damages, loss, or harm arising from the use or misuse of the information presented. If you are experiencing a mental health emergency, please seek immediate assistance from a qualified healthcare provider or call your emergency services in your area. Thank you for listening to the Liberated Equestrian Podcast.